All right, Tim. I would like to talk about Pierre Dorion. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He traded a player.
Yeah.
It's pretty good so far. And Las Vegas traded the player to another team, Anaheim. But that was on the list of the players that he did not want to go. How am I doing so far?
It was at the top of the list.
Yeah. And he did not want to go to Anaheim. And Ottawa lost its first pick.
Right.
Over this.
Because what happened was Dorian, from what we've heard, didn't send that player's no trade list. And so Vegas didn't know.
Are you sure?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. Anyhow, that's how
Steve Staios.
that's how he got general manager.
Right, because he was with Edmonton, and he left Edmonton and became president. And you and I, we've all talked about how he was going to be the general manager of Ottawa because Michael Andolar, who owns the team, used to own the Hamilton Bulldogs, and Staios did a great job with the Bulldogs.
He did a good job. He did a great job in Hamilton. And he was getting good crowds there, too.
He's getting good crowds. They won back-to-back OHL. But, Cindy, I'll tell you why I like Steve Staios. It's because he's got a brain and, a good hockey sense. And you could tell because his son was a really good hockey player.
Yeah.
And minor midget. And he definitely was a first or early second rounder. And Steve could have taken him to Hamilton, and he didn't because he knew there was going to be too much pressure on the kid. There's pressure on the coach. It's awkward in the dressing room for the kid. So he let him. I think he went to Windsor.
Makes sense.
So
he knows the culture of hockey and what people are like.
You remember that time that Vadnais got traded and Esposito got traded to New York?
Right.
I'll tell you a story there. That I got a call from Harry about 5:30 in the morning. He says, you better get down to Vadnais and Esposito because he says that it's going to break here, and if it breaks here, they'll get a hold of them first and everything.
So and let's just put that in context. This was probably the biggest trade in the National Hockey League.
Phil got 76 goals, I think, the year before. And he dropped down to 65 goals, and he said, Phil, you've had a bad year.
Yes, he had 65 goals. So you're trading your 65-goal scorer. And second best defenseman next to Bobby.
And we did not want, we wanted Dallas Smith to go, and they held out for Vadnais. And Vad was my best friend. Well, it was one of my best friends. So anyhow, I had to go down. So I went down, and Doki was in the room too. Doki, go for a walk. And I told Vad, and he said, oh, geez, he said, Raymond, his wife was sick and everything. And he said, I have a no-trade contract. I said, oh, no, Harry wouldn't do that. And I phoned Harry, and Harry was in his office, and he says, no. And I could feel the pages flipping on the contract, and sure enough, and it was dead silence. Harry, and I kept hollering, Harry. So I said, he's found out that you do have a no-trade contract. I said, and so we sat there, and I said, Vad, if he doesn't get you now, he's going to get you later. And I said, why don't you go to New York and ask them for some money? And he got $100,000.
So you told Vadnais to ask for more money in order to break the contract.
I said, why don't you go to New York and New York will give you some extra money? And he gave him $100,000. You want to hear? Okay, so anyhow, I phoned Bobby. I don't know why I phoned Bobby, so I phoned Bobby. Bobby hadn't played. This was his first game back. And there he was in his shorts waiting outside Phil's room. I knocked on the door, and Phil answered, and he had white pajamas on. I never forgot he had white silk pajamas on. White, that's what he slept in. So anyhow, I walk in, and I told Phil, I said, you've been traded. He says, and he started to cry. Started to cry. He was the Boston Bruins. So anyhow, I told him he's been traded. He says, if you tell me, and Bobby had come in and wandered over It was raining as usual in Vancouver. He's looking out the window. And he says, Grapes, this is Phil talking. He says, if you tell me I've been traded to New York, I'm going to jump right out that window. I said, Bobby, get away from that window.
Did you really? Or is that just a story?
I don't know. Phil tells the story all the time. Anyhow, I told him, and you know what happened that morning? I blew the whistle to speed up, and nobody sped up. It was like a revolt. And needless to say, I can't tell you what I told them. I said, we can trade Vadney. We can trade anybody in this club. And anyhow.
Well, tell the story. Like you talked how Carl Vadney and you were good friends. Tell the story you were in Montreal in your Calder Cup ring.
Bad and I were really good friends. We were really good friends. I don't know how we ever became good friends, but he was French Canadian, and all my friends, and in Colorado, my best friend was Rene Robert.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I said he says, I'm going out to my jeweler. He says, would you like to come? I said, well, I got nothing to do. So we went out to the jeweler, and he says, that ring, he says, you got there. We had got it from Joe Crozier, and it had 4 pieces of glass in it.
Yeah, it was your Calder Cup ring, right?
Yeah, and it was terrible looking a ring. And I said, yeah, we won 4-4. He says, give me the ring. And he said something to the guy in French. So I went back, and he says, well, when I went back in about 2 weeks or something like that by myself, and the guy said, there's a great big diamond in it. I said, holy Dinah. I said, I can't afford that. I don't have any money. And he said, it's all taken care of. Carl Vadney took care of it.
Didn't you say, though, it was one of the diamonds out of one of his Stanley Cup rings?
What happened was that he had all the diamonds taken out, and he was having a ring made for Raymond. And he said, give the big diamond to put Grapes. Anyhow, and we traded him.
You were giving the players heck about something, and you said, I admire Vad. He got in there and he fought Schultz. And Vad's not a good fighter.
Yeah, and he come up to me after he's Donnie. He says, I don't know why you say I'm not a good fighter.
I remember the story you said, I always remember from Carol Vadney, where you were in a really, really fancy restaurant.
Oh.
And he saves your bacon, not looking like a right off the farm.
Well, anyhow, I was with him and Vad, and him and Phil Esposito. Go ahead. Yeah, give that little girl over there. Give that little girl. And the bill come, and we're going to split it 3 ways. I said, the last time I ever went out with those guys, I'll tell you that.
So, Dad, Cindy, the Leafs are actually, all the Canadian teams are in a funk except for Vancouver. They're rolling along.
They'll pull out of it. They'll pull out of it.
So they played Boston the other day, the Leafs, and they lost 3-2 in overtime. And there was a hit. Marchand hit Liljegren into the boards, and some of the Leaf fans said it was dirty, and he should.
It was dirty. Marchand is my favorite Bruin player, and it was dirty. He put his stick between his legs and got him. And not one person went over and said, I don't think you should do that, Mr. Marchand. And he was explaining to the. Did you see him?
He was talking to the bench, and Bertuzzi was laughing, and Reeves was chirping at him. But here's the thing, though, Dad. After the next day, Keefe said they had a meeting with the Leaf players to say you got to stick up for each other. Like, do you really need to have a meeting to say, hey, look, if somebody takes one of our players and drives him feet first into the boards, go over and say something to him.
At least say you're a little upset. But you got to play Reeves. You got to play him. Like he just can't sit there. It doesn't do any good for him to sit there.
So you had a guy, let's say like Bobby Miller. Bobby Miller, like he's not Ryan Reeves or anything, but he was a 4th-line player. Yeah. He ended up getting 20 goals. Like how many shifts?
He would go on every second. Like if the three top lines went on, he would go on the 4th line.
Right.
He would get on about 3 or 4, but they got to play. You can't sit there you can't sit there, and I know because I sat there. You can't sit there, and your legs freeze up on you or something. I don't know what happens to your legs, but your legs freeze up. And Reeves has got to play. He's got to play. He just can't sit there on the bench like a
mad dog, right?
Yeah, I.
So once again, you're saying it's the coach that's the problem.
Well, there's so many guys back of that bench there. That one guy, what's his name, Tim?
Is it Boucher?
Yeah, he looks like
he's auditioning for the head coaching job, and I don't. Yeah. He's making no bones about it.
Yeah, he looks like he's in charge already. Got the paper and he's got the whole deal.
That's what I think. I think there's too many people talking to too many Leafs.
Who do they listen to? I mean, you got the head coach with his hands in his pocket all the time. Every time I go, I always like watching the bench. I like to see the dynamics of the bench going on. And I don't know, Dad. I don't know what you say. You see a guy with his hands in his pockets a lot.
And if they leave this guy alone and let him just coach the way he wants to coach, because he was a haywire guy I've said this before, he was a haywire guy.
Yeah. But though, Dad, I watched that game, Boston, and he never put Reeves out against Marchand.
No.
You know what I mean? So you go, okay, well, and you hear, well, it was a 2-2 game. It's a 2-2 game in November, and you lost anyway.
Yeah, you're going to lose.
So,
I would have put Reeves out against, and I would have backed him down.
Yeah,
I would have. There's no doubt that, and I don't know if Marchand would have fought Reeves or not.
No, but you know what? Some other Bruins would have jumped in.
Yeah,
right. Because I read in Steve Simmons' column today, and he made a good point. Last year in the playoffs, when Morgan Riley really hit one of their star players, the first two guys to jump in and start throwing punches were Stamkos and Kucherov. They're two top players. And, it's funny, it's Shanahan's got the team. And
Shanahan.
Such a soft
Shanahan. You can't believe this Shanahan, when he played, boy, he played with a broken ankle. Remember that?
Yeah, he blocked a shot, blocked another shot, crawled off the ice.
And, I just don't understand it. I just don't understand the Leafs. I'll tell you one thing, boy, they get a good power play. That's one good thing they put on that power play.
Well, they scored. This is Sunday morning, so they got 4 goals last night and 2 goals in Boston. So their last 6 goals have all been scored by Matthews and Marner.
Well, they play about 90 minutes a game, so that's play.
Like last night. You were watching the game. And Buffalo scored, and they put the camera on Matthews on the ice. And you go, geez, he's on the ice a lot for a lot of goals. And you go, well, he's on the ice he's always on the ice, so he's going to be scored against. So, Dad, the one thing I got to ask, we'll go back. The Leafs are playing Tampa. They win. Max Domi gets 3 points. Knives gets his first 2 goals. And you think, well, they got a little bit of chemistry. And the next game, they're not playing together.
If I was coaching, they would be playing together.
So when did you kind of monkey around with the lines?
If one line was going and wasn't going, I'd just put Donnie Marchand on, and he'd straighten out that line. I don't know. I don't think he liked me too well, but it doesn't matter. He played the hockey game, and he straightened out that line. Every line he went on, he straightened out.
Why? He was just a good...
I don't know. He just up and down. And see, Selke's trophy was put in for a guy like Gainey and Marcotte. Yeah. They didn't get many goals. And I remember Mr. Selke saying, this is for the player that doesn't score many goals, but does a lot of back checking. Well, Donnie Marcotte... He back-checked with Guy Lafleur. You can't get much better than that. And he was the guy that checked Lafleur.
So, Cindy and Dad, we have a new sponsor, Vintage Tendy Magazine. It's a magazine for goalies, by goalies, and that's where they get the word Tendy. Oh. And it is an unbelievable magazine.
Best pictures I've ever seen. Yeah. And I've seen an awful lot of pictures.
I always say it's almost like a coffee book.
Yeah, it is like You know why I like it, Tim? They have close-ups of the goalies' masks, and I just love looking at the detail.
Cindy, remember they had Ron and I on Reimer.
Yeah, one of them, Reimer, had his. Had both you and Ron's picture on it.
Yeah, remember the kid in the minors we were watching? He had a bull terrier.
Oh yeah, he had a bull terrier on.
And that kid, I forget it. I wish I knew his name. Remember how he could fire a puck?
Yeah. Oh yeah, with little guy. Hey,
Yeah.
he just fire the puck. I couldn't believe it. He could shoot a puck better than the guys who were shooting at him.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, but this magazine's for goalies by goalies. It's unbelievable pictures.
Yeah, you'll love it.
And really super high gloss finish.
Thick paper.
Thick paper. And there's this week they have a article on Clint Malarchuk, and you've got an article on.
I've got an article in there
about Tretiak. So if you want to take a look, visit Vintage, VINTAGE, Tendy, TENDY, magazine.com, all one word, to subscribe, or go visit their Facebook page, Vintage Tendy Magazine. As they say, if you got a man cave, you want those pictures, because they had, as they say, I said before, they had a picture of Eddie Johnson that it looked like it was a high definition taken with a camera today.
And it's a great picture too. He's getting ready for a shot.
Yeah. It shows you how he looked like he has a windbreaker on. Yeah. He had no mask. Like there was no equipment back then with those goalies.
So, and I used to see Cheevers all the time. He'd be bruises on one side to the other, but he never complained.
So check it out, VintageTendyMagazine.com.
You'll love it.
Okay, Dad, this is from Alex B1 from Twitter, and he wants to know, what was the toughest rink to coach in, whether you're in Rochester or the Bruins or Colorado?
Well, there's no doubt Providence, Rhode Island was the toughest team. They had a brand new arena, too. I'll never forget. I could go on and on and on about that. Well, someday I'll tell us.
Just a quick story. Was that the one you had where there was a rematch with Wensink?
Yeah.
And then you said there was a big fight in the War Memorial, and then a couple of weeks later you're going back on Providence, and everybody said this was the big rematch, and you said John's not coming in the.
John's not coming, but the reason he wasn't coming was he had a sore knee.
And then the guy went nuts because he sold out the
rink.
Oh
yeah, and he sold out, and he went crazy. I had more fun in Rochester than I had anywhere, and I used to remember, Cindy, you used to make sandwiches.
Oh yeah, I mean we did have a good time in Rochester. I mean it was like a little family, and I was the caterer for the press, and I made my little finger sandwiches, and I was part-time secretary.
And one of them said they were too damp.
Oh, remember that? That was a reporter. I remember his name. Can I say his name?
Sure.
I remember it was Rick Sayers for the Democrat and Chronicle, and he said the sandwiches were damp. And I said, well, that was because of the tea towels that I put on them. And you were so angry that he never was allowed in the dressing room again after that. And the poor guy never knew why. He never got a good quote from you guys because he complained about the sandwiches.
Well, don't complain about the sandwiches.
Next week, we're going to run a bit long, but next week, Dad, I want to ask you, you were coach, and then Mom said, you're not going to get along with the GM, so see if you could be the GM, and you became the coach and general manager of Rochester.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
And
so the question I want to ask next week is, you had almost no business sense, but yet you had to deal with all the contracts and everything.
I dealt, and I remember John Denhammer was the guy was assistant coach. He did the general manager's job, and he used to.
But you had to figure out how much a guy was worth.
I remember one time Dennis Ball phoned me about Francois Oumet.
I remember him.
You remember him?
No,
he was a good-looking guy.
Good-looking guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, well, I don't need another defenseman. He said, Don, I said I want to send Francois Oumet to Rochester. I said, and I figured out in my head. And I said, how much is he making? He says, 11,000. Holy shit, there was nobody making 11,000 in our club. So I figured out, and I figured out when I was talking to him, I figured it out to about $10 in my head. So
how much was left on his contract?
Yeah.
So we'll get into it more next week, Dad, about it. But I just amazes me now that Cindy, you kind of worked with business, how Dad doesn't have a lot of business skills, but you had to do how to buy the sticks, and you had to get the buses, and you had to get
one thing I did know was hockey.